The great potter sat at his wheel each day working carefully and accurately on his pottery. It was his passion, his pride and joy, his delight. His workshop was not large and spacious, but he had enough space to move around. The walls on either side of him contained shelves that displayed pieces of his work, some complete, some for repairing, and some to be worked on after a period of waiting. He always sat facing the window, which was large and overlooked the village in the nearby valley, nestled in the distant mountains. Today the great potter sat at his wheel, a loving look in his eyes, and gentleness in his hands. It was time to turn a clay jar into something spectacular. He was particularly fond of this jar because of its honesty. Unlike the other jars and pottery he had made, this jar spoke to him regularly, sometimes with tears in its eyes. Perhaps this is what made this jar stand out above the rest. Without a word, the potter brushed the jar's surface with a sodium silicate and quickly dried the surface with a heat gun. With the perfect amount of speed, the potter began to work the clay, stretching it from the inside, which was still soft and pliable. The clay began to talk to him.
Great potter, I am in pain. How can I do this? It is too much. I am breaking.
The potter looked with love at the jar and said,
I know, jar. It's going to be okay. I promise.
The jar tried to be brave. The jar tried to persevere and keep it all together. After all, the other pottery was watching, or so the jar thought. The jar did everything it could to bear it. Each day it spoke its heart to the potter, and each day the potter reassured the jar that he loved the jar and was always with her. One day the potter came into the workshop and found the jar in pieces on the floor. With tears in his eyes, the great potter picked up the jar and placed her on the potting wheel. The two said nothing to each other. The potter knew that someone had come into his workshop and broke his beautiful jar. He didn't worry about police or justice. He knew that the best way to deal with the offenders was to repair the jar and to make it his best work. Skillfully, the great potter took out some pure gold. This was a skill only he could do. It was highly sought after by collectors and considered by the surrounding villages to be exclusive. His jar deserved to be exclusive. While he blended the clay and the pure gold together, he continued the stretching and cracking process. Jar was not in a good space and began to cry.
Great potter, where are you? Make me whole. I can't be broken and alive. I need to be whole.
The great potter wiped away the jar's tears and said,
I am here. Peace. I have made you pure and set you apart from the other pottery in my workshop. I am putting you together better than you were before. You are preserved, sound, complete, and blameless in my eyes. This was not your fault. I am here. I am working. It won't be long, and you will be through this. Peace, jar, peace. Time went on with the jar crying to the potter, who in turn reassured and loved the jar. Finally, the time came when the potter was done. Jar was whole and intricately crafted, with beautiful gold designs etched in it. The great potter had done it. Jar was everything he had dreamt she would be and more. In the midst of your situation, you are the jar, and God is the great potter.